people with large goals typically eat humble pie regularly if they are authentically trying to fail forward towards them. So if your partner doesn't have big goals, they might end up arrogant. This is the big fish in the small pond.
We all have been there at one part or another where it's like we said something we didn't mean. We acted in a way that we didn't really mean, right? Like how many times have we kind of like done something that like ultimately what we look at after we have a degree of regret or shame or guilt or whatever it is. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. This is episode number 52. He said with absolute certainty. This is episode number 52, and the title is, Love?
The top 3 relationship killers.
Little bit of a triggering title. But these are the things that you want to watch out for. As always, thank you so much to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show, video, audio. We appreciate you so much. Show notes, all of it. Thank you. As always, sweetheart, what is your intention for today's episode?
My intention is to what you were just about to go into was making sure that our listeners know when they might be headed towards a relationship killer, because ultimately we really do believe in love and we believe it should be protected. And all of our listeners here that are listening and joining us in the Conscious Couples journey, they want to prevent that from happening, right? They want to prevent their relationship from dying, growing together, not apart. So we hope and we aspire that through this episode, all of our listeners are equipped with the awareness and know-how to circumvent or navigate around these killers.
And behind door number 1 is relationship killer number 1. I'm just joking. We're being playful tonight. But honestly, I just want to say this really quickly. So this is not a you problem. This is a problem in relationships in general. And this is true for friendships, business partnerships, family relationships, you name it. But obviously on this podcast, we're talking more about intimate relationships. But you can kind of think back to your past friendships too, where there was these things present and it really was toxic. Right. And the idea here is if the body gets a virus that's deadly and it is able to stay in the body long enough, duplicate long enough, eventually it will kill the body. And again, this is a metaphor here, but these are the top 3 relationship killers. So sweetheart, what's the first one?
First one is arrogance. Arrogance is that experience, and honestly, I think that we can all harbor all of these 3 if we're not careful. So I think that we can be mindful of what we might be bringing into a relationship, because arrogance is like, I want everyone to imagine being around someone that just thinks that their stuff don't stank, right? They have high levels of confidence without really much merit underneath that, and they don't really care how they impact people, and it's almost to a detriment. Where if you're in a relationship with them, you start to feel as though your needs don't really matter. You start to feel as though you don't matter when spending time with this person. And I know for me, this is something that I've run into in so many different relationships, and especially in intimate relationships where I've been in partnerships that were actually like my partner was very arrogant. They thought that they knew everything. They had 0 levels of humility, right? Super confident for no reason, and certainly super confident with no merit, right? Like, and honestly thought that the world should, and myself including, should be eating out of the palm of their hand. And this is a relationship killer, because if you look at arrogance over time, someone who doesn't have a level of humility that can realize that relationships really are about growing, and so much of that requires humility. When you get in a relationship with someone, you start to experience and come up against pretty much the wall of everyone's vulnerability, because you start to get to know someone. You have to like almost show a little bit of yourself, and everyone knows this when it comes to like dating, right? It's like a little scary because like you don't want to be seen or you don't want to show, and it's like a little shy, right? But someone who is arrogant, over time, they can really start to chip away at the relationship and kill it, because they're not harboring or showing any humility, any of that growth, and aren't really willing nor able to get vulnerable, which is so important.
So let's say, for example, Emilia and I, if she were to come to me with something that she was concerned with, and I were to just kind of say, oh, no, that's not true.
Brush it off.
And just brush it off.
Yeah.
That's arrogance. To me, arrogance is low competence, aka low skills, low awareness, and high confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine a young kid, and this is what I think of, a young kid who just got their license and is speeding like crazy because they are arrogant. They've never driven before, so they have low competence. They have low awareness of how dangerous cars are because they've never been in a car accident,
right?
But they have high confidence. That's a dangerous combination.
Mm-hmm.
And that's arrogance. Now, if you're arrogant in your relationship, you're going to crash.
For sure.
And you're not going to be able to grow together because one of the partners is always going to feel like they can't bring anything up because you think you know everything already. You're not open.
Yeah.
You're not open to learning. You're not open to humility, to your point, vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you're in a relationship with someone who is arrogant, you're going to have to question that and say, do you think that maybe you're being a little bit arrogant in this arena?
Mm-hmm.
Like, me, I go to the gym regularly, and, you're first time in the gym and you're acting like you know everything, and I'm just trying to help.
Right.
And you know what it does is it disconnects you. It
Yep.
disconnects you from truth. It disconnects you from vulnerability, humility, love, all of that. Okay, so arrogance is number one. And if you or your partner allow arrogance to stay, first of all, humble pie will come eventually. Just try to take your humble pie. Humble pie is good for you. Eat it every week.
Mm-hmm.
Eat it every week. Don't eat it all at once.
And don't wait for like karma to come around too. That's what I find a lot of people, babe, when you and I talk about like relationships, a lot of people won't bring up some of these things. These are like the people who like to sweep things underneath the rug. They're so arrogant because they like know subconsciously that these things will eventually come up. But they don't have the
I don't have a
courage.
drinking problem.
Exactly.
Like, no, I don't have a drinking problem. Like, that's arrogant, right? Instead of like, oh, do you think maybe?
Right.
See the difference in my energy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes courage to be humble, which is the opposite of arrogance.
And the very last thing I'll say about arrogance, sweetheart, is why would someone work on a problem they don't think they have? Why would someone work on a problem they don't think they have? They wouldn't. That's arrogance. And trust me, the humble pie will come eventually, and maybe the humble pie is leaving them.
Yeah.
Just saying. Arrogance is a killer, a relationship killer.
For sure.
Very important. Okay, number two. And by the way, I didn't mean to interrupt you, love. Was there anything else you wanted to share on arrogance?
I think the only thing, just don't wait for karma to come around, because like, yes, she's got your back for sure. But if you really care about this relationship and your partner's being arrogant, or you might be bringing arrogance into the equation, like ownership and call it out, like that's something that I know can save a relationship. The courage to be like, honestly, you're being really arrogant, or I'm sensing arrogance right now. Like, do you think? And then, I think that's what can divert the issue of killing the relationship. But that's all.
The other piece quickly is people with large goals typically eat humble pie regularly if they are authentically trying to fail forward towards them. So if your partner doesn't have big goals, they might end up arrogant. This is the big fish in the small pond, right? So be careful. Okay, number two, love, behind door number two of relationship killers.
Behind number two is dishonesty. So everyone, I would be surprised if you got through life without being lied to, right? And everyone can experience that and go back to a moment where they got lied to and they realized that someone was dishonest, and it was because, like, for whatever reason, like, it never feels good for someone to be dishonest, right? And I remember going back to one of my relationships where my partner was really dishonest, and turns out over time always was. And I'll give an example of this. This was a relationship that I really cared about at one point in time. And I remember having a conversation about this person's usage of cigarettes and how, for me, I really did not believe in cigarettes. I didn't believe in smoking. I thought it was really, really bad for just humans in general, right? So that was something that I wasn't interested in nor okay with, for my partner to be smoking. And certainly if that were to happen, I didn't want to have a smell of that come near me. And I remember this partner at one point in time reassured me that he had quit. And I was so happy for him, because ultimately I knew that he was at one point really addicted to that. And to overcome something like an addiction like that, I know from other people that's really challenging. So at the time I was super proud of him, so excited, and come to find out a couple months later, that was not actually the case. So that partner was so dishonest with me, and it wasn't really about the cigarettes, right? Like, and that's the thing that I think that we find in relationships, though that is a big component, right? It was the fact that that person didn't have the courage to actually share in the vulnerability, that they're actually not willing to change that component because of the deeper root that's underneath that. They feel as though they need that, whatever, like, and it was just a huge misalignment in terms of beliefs, values, aspirations, all at once. And when that happened, it was really hard for me to continue to trust this human being at like a fundamental level.
Right. Because what else might not be true?
Exactly.
What else might he be lying about?
Exactly.
And what a humble person would do who has vulnerability is, listen, honestly, I'm having a really hard time with quitting this. And this isn't me, by the way. This is her past partner. Obviously. But you can sense the energy. You can sense the humility. And if he had come to you and said, I'm just having a really hard time quitting, like I want to get on the patch, or I want to get hypnosis or whatever, Emilia would be open to helping him. Instead, he just brushed it under the rug, lied about it. Yeah. And now that Emilia found that out, and again, if there's anyone out there who's never been lied to, I don't think that exists. It doesn't. Right? So think of a time when you were lied to or when you lied to others. Worst feeling in the world. Yeah. Terrible. Now you have to question everything. Right. Now you have to question everything they've ever said to you. Yeah. What isn't true? What is true? It shakes the whole foundation of your relationship, which I think is trust. I think the foundation of every relationship is trust, and it's very hard to build that back after you're dishonest. Exactly. Yeah. So it's not even about that one moment. It's about everything before and after that one deceit or one dishonest moment came in. Right. So that's number 2, top relationship killer. Again. Super positive episode. No, but these are the bugs in the garden that you got to squash while they're small. Right. As much as possible. I'll tell a really quick story. So Emilia and I were at her parents' lake house, and I like to exercise there. I have this route that I do. I do running, and then typically I swim dock to dock, but one of the docks wasn't out yet, so I just swam out into the middle and then back, not all the way to the middle. Which, it was raining, and I remember doing this, and I remember with the visibility, Emilia, you were afraid basically that a boat wouldn't see me. Yeah. And so you said, please don't go out that far. Oh. And so I went out, and then I went back, I went out, I went back, and I was doing laps, quote unquote. Came back in high and mighty. Babe, did 4 laps to the middle and back. I am the man. Don't you think I'm awesome? I didn't say it like that, obviously. No. But, and then I was like, oh my God, inside myself, I was like, did I just lie to her? I never, ever will lie to her. I promised myself and her that I would never lie to her. Never hurt her heart, help her shine as bright as possible. These are commitments I made to myself and to her out loud. Yeah. And I was like, oh, damn. There you go. Sweetheart, honestly, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know why I just embellished. It was only 3 laps. I only did there and back 3 times. I don't know what that was about. I know what it was about. I was trying to be awesome, and I want you to think I'm awesome. So, so anyways, I told her the truth because I want her to know that that's the level of commitment that I have. Right. And I told Kevin that story. He's like, seriously, that's what you lied about? It's like, dude, not a big deal. Not in a negative way. He's like, that's the level of standard that I have of I will never lie to you about anything. And there's been a few other little things in our relationship in like the last 3 years where it's like, babe, I don't know why I rounded up. It's actually only whatever, 9, not 10 or whatever. And I think that's just the little part of me that wants you to think I'm awesome. Right. And so the point that I want to make and lead by example, we're not expecting you to be perfect. No. Right? We're not expecting you to never, ever, ever tell a white lie. What I'm saying is own it, be vulnerable, bring it to your partner, and then be like, listen, I'm so sorry. I don't know what that was about. Because it's embarrassing. You don't lie about how many laps you did? That's embarrassing.
Well, because you realize your
5 years
ego
old?
starts driving more than you do, your conscious self. And like someone who wants to be a conscious partner realizes that like that's embarrassing because it's like, oh, well, will she or he or whoever not think I'm that great? And as a matter of fact, when you had brought that to me, like that built so much trust even more. And that actually made me love you so much deeper too, because it was like, there's such a beautiful vulnerability in that builds that safety, right? So anyone that might delude or let their ego delude them otherwise, you know, you'd be surprised what happens on the end of that. Like, I think you're even more awesome because you can consciously call out when your ego is driving.
Right. 100%. And my ego was driving.
Yeah.
It's the embellish, right? That whole
natural,
thing.
Yeah.
And that created more certainty. Now Emilia knows that I'm holding myself to that level, that standard, because I easily could have been like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's one lap. No, it's not. It's not one lap. It's the principle that you lied.
Right.
Right? No matter how small. Because if you let that go, what else will you let go?
Right.
And that's a slippery slope. So, okay, behind door number 3, the super positive, empowering episode.
Hey.
What's going on? This is Branden and Hannah. We wanted to give a shout out to Alan and Emilia and their relationship talks. And going into relationship talks, I was under the impression that, you know, my relationship didn't have any conflict or didn't have any problems. You know, it actually was that way, but I knew I wanted a relationship that resembled Alan and Emilia, and that's a relationship that is just next level and different from other relationships. So seeking out their help has really brought me and Hannah together, and it's just been really, really incredible, and I can't thank them enough.
Yeah, Alan and Emilia have both helped us in recognizing and acknowledging each other's really important core values and given us insight and guidance on how to align those together so that we know we're growing together and never apart. The goal is always to kind of be in everything together as a team.
Alan and Emilia, we love you and thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Behind door number 3, the top 3, number 3, relationship killer.
This is a lack of emotional regulation. So emotional regulation is like, I want everyone to imagine they're watching a scary movie. What happens in terms of your emotions when you're watching it? You're probably feeling anxiety. You know, you're leading up behind closed doors. Like the person in the horror film is about to go near that scary sound. What is happening? Your emotions are starting to run buck wild, right? I want you to
turn
imagine,
it off, hide under the covers.
Exactly.
Immediately.
I want you to imagine yourself taking a huge deep breath, right? And you actually not having a reaction to whatever scary max that you know is happening or you know is going to jump through. And then all of a sudden, like, you're going to be terrified, right? That's what's happening in our relationship. And oftentimes we get so either anxious to what an outcome will be happening in our relationship, or we fear, or there's so many emotions that happen because why relationships are like our deepest, most vulnerable parts. And we bring our deepest, most vulnerable parts into relationships. And so it's like a whole trigger stack, a petri dish, if you will, of opportunities for emotions to come forward. And what ends up killing relationships so often, and I'm sure we all have been there at one part or another, where it's like we said something we didn't mean. We acted in a way that we didn't really mean, right? Like, how many times have we kind of like done something that like ultimately what we look at after, we have a degree of regret or shame or guilt or whatever it is. It's because this degree of a lacking of emotional regulation, because we aren't necessarily choosing our emotions and taking that big breath before we, go into the wild or the scary wilderness when it comes to relationships. Like, that lack of emotional regulation, it also brings a huge upset to the relationship. And so, like, I want you to imagine you're trying to share something vulnerable with your partner, and your partner gets triggered by that. And all of a sudden he or she gets up in a hissy fit and walks out of the room.
Fight or flight, freeze or fawn. This is a trauma response. So most people have heard of fight or flight. We've talked about this in previous episodes. So a trigger is something that pokes a deep insecurity or fear. And then there's a trauma response. Cortisol spikes and it's fight or flight. And so a lot of times that's when emotions get really heated, and then you can either dissipate those emotions and like be vulnerable, or you can let your trauma response run wild, which might be fight, which is going to basically explode. And the analogy that I use is the volcano. When the volcano is about to erupt, let it ooze out of the top with tears. Don't let it explode out the top and destroy the island. And yes, I just thought of Jurassic World with the island with all the dinosaurs running with the So if any of our listeners, we had a dinosaur kick. We watched all the Jurassic World movies, and one of them is on an island where the volcano erupts and the dinosaurs are running, and it's so sad. Yeah, and they all basically die. And that's what's going to happen to your relationship island. To your relationship island if you don't emotionally regulate. And one more thing real quick, love. So when I think of emotional dysregulation, I think of like me as 7-year-old kid like screaming into my pillow. Right into my pillow. Or the minions in Despicable Me. For emotional regulation, I think of me now. No, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding, babe. No, fabulous. You think of like a centered Buddha, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. And obviously, all of us are in between the screaming pillow kid and Buddha. Try to go be a little more Buddha, a little less screaming pillow kid.
Well, that's what ends up happening. You start off really young. You don't know really how to regulate your emotions.
I did not.
And quite frankly, some people, as they get older, they're never really encouraged to try to regulate their emotions. And we find so much that people don't even know where to start.
It's a skill.
It is such a skill.
An intentional practice that you really have to work on consistently over time. And you never get fully Buddha.
Unless that's your track.
And honestly, even then, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure Buddha screamed into a pillow every once in a while.
Oh my God.
I'm just kidding. But anyways, you just get better and better and better at this. It's kind of like running. If you're a runner, you're never going to have the perfect time. You just get better and better and better over time. And I think that's an important piece of this. So think about your relationship. Imagine two partners that are humble and not arrogant, that are always honest with one another, even when it's hard, most especially when it's hard, and who have great emotional regulation. They are going to be set up for success in the long run. Now imagine someone's arrogant as shit. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Arrogant as hell. I apologize for those who have children in the room. Who lies constantly. Yeah. Arrogant. Who's the arrogant liar who lacks emotional regulation? Yeah. Good luck.
Run for the hills.
AKA may or may not have been one of my past partners. I'm kidding. No,
Shame,
really.
though.
Yeah. But honestly, think of that friend who's arrogant, dishonest, and doesn't emotionally regulate. It's going to be a dangerous game. Yeah. Right. And so whether it's friends or family or an intimate relationship, we're playful on this podcast. We like to bring it light and deep at the same time. I like to bring humor. I really do.
Yeah. I bring it deep.
But yeah, exactly. Dark. Yeah. Deep, dark. And then I climb out with some humor and it's perfect. And some movie references. But seriously, these are the 3 relationship killers. Yeah. And if you don't identify and improve these over time, your relationship might be in trouble. Remember, as always on the Conscious Couples podcast, it can take 10 years to build a relationship and a really bad day or week to burn it down.
Yeah.
And so it's like the Jenga tower. You keep taking, every time you're arrogant, dishonest, or not emotionally regulated, you're taking blocks out of the Jenga tower. You're hurting the trust and the certainty of the long-term relationship. And this whole thing can topple if you're not careful. So insert another analogy here. No, but that's all we've got for you. That's all I've got for you.
Yeah, top 3. I want everyone to look back at all of their relationships, kind of in closing of this episode. And I want you to think which biggest killer of the 3 that we mentioned really was the most prevalent and why that relationship ended. I can literally map back at one point or another. There was huge moments in different relationships as to one of these top 3 that ultimately like sealed the deal for me with every past relationship. It was like, oh yeah, you were dishonest the whole time. But I remember a distinct moment where it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And like when you can realize that, in retrospect, you might even realize that there might be a pattern here. I might have chosen partners that were constantly arrogant, and there might be insights for you there. I know certainly there was for me when I realized all 3 of these were the case. Then that was interesting.
And they are connected.
Yeah,
they are connected. And this goes back to virtue and vice. And if you're arrogant and dishonest, most likely you're not going to be very emotionally regulated, because if you're arrogant, why would you work on your emotions? And why would you do that deep inner work when you think you're awesome? And again, this is all subconscious. A lot of this is not conscious.
Right.
It's not like everyone's consciously like, wow, I'm wicked arrogant.
Right.
That's not how it works. These are unconscious things that can take the garden if you're not careful. So before we go, so this is Monday that you're listening to this, which is awesome. Thank you so much. So on Thursday, we have a Relationship Talks virtual event. It's going to be our 20th event, February 9th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be dialing in your love languages. We currently have reached out to one of our client couples that we work with, and we want to see if they're willing to be the warrior of the event. So every event has a virtual event coordinator, which is doing the behind-the-scenes stuff, chat master, which is engaging in the chat, and then a warrior, potentially, which is a couple that is vulnerable and strong enough to sit up there and actually dial in their love languages with you, the audience, with the listeners, with us. And so hopefully that will be happening. I'm super, super excited for that. And we hope that you join us. Again, you can come and participate as much as you want. You can keep your camera off and your mic muted the whole time if you want. We want to have you there. Be there or be square.
Yeah, baby. All right. So we have every single Saturday, Alan and I have made sure that we blocked on our calendar a half hour to make sure that we are opening our calendars to our community, to all of our Conscious Couples listeners. This time is allocated for you. This is for anyone that is having a hard time in their relationship, whether it be this topic, whether it be other topics that we've talked about before in our monthly events, in our podcast episodes. If you're having a hard time in your relationship and you want to get on the same page with your partner, this is that safe space that you've always needed but didn't know exists. Alan and I make sure that we allocate 30 minutes on our calendar. It's free, it's private, it's completely like virtual, so you don't have to like come to our house and then like meet these random strangers. It's actually incredible. And we've had so many amazing breakthroughs with couples that have taken advantage of that. And it's been actually really fun to meet our listeners. Alan's smiling at me. So with that said, I want to make sure that anyone that has tried to do that in the last like month, we know that
more than a month,
last couple months,
maybe 6 months.
Perfect. All right. So to that end, we really appreciate Alan's team and the client that you had that reached out that let us know that the link was a little bit broken. So we have, and we can confirm that that link is completely unbroken now. It's actually working. So if you had tried in the past,
the link stopped being arrogant, it stopped being dishonest, and it emotionally regulates now.
Yes, it's perfect.
It's a perfect link.
It's a perfect link. We love that link. And that link is in the show notes for you to click. It should be like 2 clicks away from you being, one-on-one with Alan and I and getting all of our full attention to help you with whatever you're struggling with in relationships, which is just so awesome. So please take advantage of that opportunity. Again, completely free, safe, private space for you to talk all things relationship and anything that you're struggling with. So book on our calendars. That will be in the show notes. And we're so excited to meet you.
This episode was so good, love. If anyone was out there listening and they were like, ooh, my partner or myself struggling with arrogance, me or my partner struggling with dishonesty, me or my partner not really great at emotional regulation. Okay, we can help you, and please book on our calendar and we will help you. And you can literally say, honestly, I think maybe I'm a little arrogant, or maybe my partner's arrogant. What do I do?
Yeah.
What can I do? There are ways to transform these.
Yeah.
We've all been arrogant before. We've all been dishonest before. We've all had lack of emotional regulation before. I really, when I was a kid, I was screaming into a pillow. I'm not kidding. Yeah. That was a thing. So the key is not to be perfect. The key is to try to be better. Please book on our calendar. So as always, love, Rome was not built in a day. No. Hold on. Rome was not built in a day. It was built every day. Love is not built in a day. Mm-hmm. It's built every single day. So falling in love is easy. Growing, sustaining, and building love over the long term is actually really challenging. Mm-hmm. So you're not alone in that journey. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. As always, it is not about you or me. It's about the we.
Bye, everyone.
I thought you were going to say the we with me.
Oh, true. I typically
okay,
do.
let's do it again. All right. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.